Even men at the top of their game find themselves wanting more from life. Whether it's more meaning, unshakable confidence, a bigger impact, more money, deeper love, a hotter sex life, or a powerful legacy. Find out how good your life can be on this episode of Man Alive. Also, as I've supported men in their love and work lives for 15 years now, many men ask for the right words to say to be more successful, attractive, and desirable. But I found it's not so simple as giving scripts or lines because every man is different. So giving words or scripts would be like giving a tall, thin man a shorter, wider man's pants, or vice versa. The words have to make sense for you and your personality, and there's so much happening beneath the surface that people are responding to. If you're interested in how to become a better lover and leader in your own unique way, go to shanajamescoaching.com/quiz, or you can text ALIVE to 44144. It only takes a couple minutes and you'll start to get an idea of how you can be both more respected and desired. After you fill it out, we can schedule a time to review your quiz and talk about your specific challenges and desires. So again, go to either shanajamescoaching.com/quiz or text ALIVE to 44144. That's ALIVE to 44144. Enjoy this episode of Man Alive. Hello, and welcome to this episode of Man Alive. I'm excited to be here today with Crystal Taylor. Crystal, welcome.
Thank you.
And we are going to talk about Tantra and how Tantra can support you to have a better sex life, to have more enjoyment in the bedroom. And overall, I think, not just in the bedroom, but also creates more health, more vibrancy, more intimacy, more connection. So thank you for having this conversation.
I'm excited about it.
Good. Can you give us a little background for men who don't know anything about Tantra, never heard of it or just maybe dabbled a little bit in it? What actually is Tantra in the way that you practice it?
Yeah, so I think that's a really good question because I think there's a lot of misconceptions about what it is. What I always like to explain to people is it's a spiritual science. Just like when you think about religion or any spiritual practices, the intention is to expand consciousness and have a more intimate connection with God and evolving self. It's a practice of allowing you or giving you the tools to navigate life's challenges a little bit better. So people should understand when they hear Tantra that is the intention of the practice. It's a well-rounded spiritual science, just like other religions and spiritual practices, but it's a much older science. So unlike Christianity, Judaism, it's more about alchemy than it is about like worshiping a particular god,
right,
or don't do this and do that. It's more like we're studying the science of nature and using the human experience, all aspects of the human experience, to evolve who we are and understand like how do we build our spirit, how do we become strong internally. But that includes sexual energy.
Right. I mean, there's such a depth to Tantra in the ways that I've studied it as well, not as much as you have, but there's a lot of Western teachings that are just about sex, right? Just sexual Tantra. And where you're coming from, it sounds like, is this deeper practice, and it does benefit your sex life, but that's not the only aspect of it.
Yeah. So like, I think there's a lot of focus on the sexual aspect because it is like the foundation of creation, right?
Yeah.
So it has a huge influence. So our primal nature and understanding it is kind of where we start, as we're maturing spiritually as human beings having a human experience. So even Tantra practitioners early on discovered that. Like, that's why people way long ago used to think that women were gods because they were the spiritual portal for babies. They're like, she just created a child.
Right.
So like,
miraculous.
the most amazing thing somebody could do. So spirituality kind of centered around that.
Yeah.
And so sex and sexual energy and sexuality are like the foundation because it's so influential. But it's much more than that. And then I think a lot of times there's a focus on sexuality because there's so much stigma around it.
Right.
Like,
Right, like Christianity and all the Western religions, right? There's a lot of like, don't go there. Let's not talk about this.
right.
So then it gets to come back in, in a way that
Yeah.
instead of us rejecting those parts of ourselves.
Right. So in the West, when we hear something about sex, it's like we zoom in and then that becomes the focus. But
Right.
sometimes it needs to be, because if you haven't matured or addressed that part of yourself, then it's where you need to work. And so
Yeah.
even as a yoga practitioner in the Tantrika, I would share a lot of things, but a lot of my own healing had to center around my womanhood,
Yes.
addressing my sexual energy and ways I haven't matured because I didn't get that growing up. And so for a
Okay.
lot of us, it is important.
Yeah, and I love that you're using the word mature. And so I'm curious, like when you think of a mature sexuality, right? How do you describe that?
I think maturing sexuality is understanding your primal instincts and being able to use it in a way that serves you in your life.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't run you.
Yeah.
So especially for men, if you
Yeah.
find yourself easily distracted by your erections, or when you're having intimacy, not being able to manage your ejaculation,
Yep.
or if you have trouble with relationships and just being and focusing on physical attraction where you can't get beyond this to attract people of true substance, and you're not
Mm.
feeling fulfilled in your relationships because it's such a distraction. Porn addictions, overcompensating with desires, and becoming addicted to different things
Yeah.
because you're trying to overcompensate in areas of pleasure.
Yeah.
When you have balance in that place, I think that's when you know it's more mature.
Mature. Yeah, I
Mhm.
think about that like the craving and aversion, right? In some of the Indian traditions, there's that sense of balance, right? And when you're balanced, you're not hooked on the craving and you're not hooked on the gotta get away from something, right? There's a more of a balanced way. And I think about, a sex life. I think a lot of people in Western culture, I don't know actually about the rest of the world, but I think in Western culture, a lot of sex it's physical. I mean, there's some aspect for people of love and connection, but it also tends to lack a lot of that, soul melding, opening to portals of spirit. And it's so even hard to describe. I can't even, often describe it, right? The range from primal to soul and spiritual that I think a lot of people miss out on in the Western culture.
Yeah, I think we are taught from a very young age that sex is nasty and it's bad and it's dangerous. And then we get married and we still have those ideas. So like even though we're told, okay, when you get married, it's fine. You can do
Right.
whatever you
Then it's
want
fine
to
suddenly.
do. Yeah, and then but still subconsciously, even if you decide you're going to have premarital sex or whatever, you're
Yeah.
still subconsciously thinking that this is something bad. This is something separate from my highest being, or,
Right. Or
so
I shouldn't be a certain way. Like it's okay for me to be more dominant, but it might not be okay for me to surrender. It's okay for me to be nice, but it's not okay for me to be more aggressive or
right. And then all of the expectations that it comes from, being a man or a woman that comes, with the ideas around sex, what we're taught when we're watching porn and things like this. And
yeah.
and not really, like you were saying, experience a more well-rounded version of making love or even just having sex. Like
Yeah.
identifying what that means for you and your most authentic self. What does arousal and desire and pleasure and
Mm.
sex really mean for me? What does that mean to express my sexuality in a way that feels good to me? And I'm not just emulating or mimicking things that I was taught.
That's
Yeah.
gold, right? I love what you just said, right? Not just emulating, not just mimicking, and what is arousal for me and what is connection or intimacy for me and what makes a satisfying sex life. And then can I actually talk about that with a partner because so many partners, don't have those conversations.
Right. And that's very, very hard for men and women, especially if, there's some things that you want to try, or if you are really anxious and maybe you're having trouble with your erections that day, and being able to explain, this has nothing to do with you.
Yeah.
I have a tough time at work, or just sometimes, things are just not working, you don't know why,
Yeah.
being able to talk about that without feeling embarrassed or being defensive.
Yes.
It can be very, very hard because there's so much stigma around sexuality and this idea that men or women are supposed to be a particular way all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. Okay. Amazing. So how does Tantra, how do you work with Tantra to support, breaking down these limitations and boxes and expectations that we have ourselves in?
Yeah, so for men and women, I kind of work differently,
Mhm.
but I use kind of my own practices that I've developed, like through my intuition and creativity, whether it be journaling or like having them do different activities like interviewing their genitals. So I tap into their subconscious, like I might do an interview and say, well, what would your penis say? Give him a name and I want to talk to him. And what would he say about your sex life? What would he say about your partners?
Oh, I love this.
I do stuff like that, but then I also do meditative practices. I teach tantra practices for men in particular. I teach them about lingam flexing or lingam breathing, which is a practice centered around semen retention and learning how to manage your ejaculation
Yeah.
and
And
also
lingam, for those men listening who don't know, right? That's the tantric word, or the Vedic word, I guess, for penis or cock, or yeah, lingam, and yoni is the counterpart for
right,
females.
right.
Yeah.
So, and lingam breathing, lingam flexing is a meditation where we learn to teach guys how to manage their ejaculation
Mhm.
and get to the point where they can have be multi-orgasmic because they learn how
Yeah.
to separate their orgasms from ejaculation
Yes.
and restore that energy, allow that testosterone and those hormones to circulate throughout their body, but
As
also
opposed to releasing them.
as opposed to releasing it.
Mhm.
And spiritually, it takes a certain amount of discipline and mindset and inner
Right.
awareness to be able to do that. So you're working on all levels. And see, now we're making our sexuality more sacred and multifaceted because you're understanding it a little bit deeper and you're kind of like taming the snake, that snake energy.
That is so
So,
interesting, bringing it back to maturity, right? The discipline that it takes to experience more pleasure or to open to those higher realms, through the multi-orgasmic way. It's interesting how it does take a maturity to have that kind of discipline rather than just like, I just want it when I want it, how I want it, or this is a quickie, or, not that quickies aren't okay, right? Sure, we can have a quickie sometimes, but you're bringing in this element of, okay, if I want to grow as a sexual being and I want my sexual being to be a part of my spiritual being or my soul, right? How do I do this?
yeah, and then also, I think for men in particular, how much more relaxing and confident and empowered would you feel if you ejaculate when you want to? So if you are with a
Yes.
lover, no matter what your sexual orientation is,
Yeah.
that you can feel confident that you have enough of body awareness and enough spiritual inner awareness to be able to come or not when you want to. And so, especially when you are with another female in heterosexual relationships, women are multi orgasmic.
Yep.
Their orgasms can take sometimes up to 20 minutes for them to have their most intense ones. And then they
Mhm.
have multi
They
orgasms.
could last for hours, right? And they can keep going.
Right. They can last for a really long time if they
Yeah.
can manage their ejaculation. And then if they're able to be multi orgasmic, then you can start to exchange the energy between each other, between
Yes.
your woman having an orgasm and you having an orgasm and coming together. People went, oh, let's come together, let's come together. The only way you can really do that, on, like automatic, not
On,
automatically,
on
but with,
command, or yeah, in that way.
yeah, you have to be able to have some control over when you orgasm.
Right.
And so, semen retention practices, inner awareness, being able to control your sexual energy will allow you to have more of those kind of connected, intimate experiences because you feel confident and you understand your body
Yep.
and your mind a lot more. The other thing is when you get really deep into these practices, like you're talking about coming into other realms spiritually,
Yes.
sounds like it's some kind of magical foo-foo experience, but orgasms actually like set off almost every neuron in your brain. And so when that happens, you are your consciousness gets affected. So
Yes.
you're able to become multi-orgasmic. You're firing all these different areas off in your brain, and it kind of expands what you are open to. And
Yes. Can you
stress.
put words to that? I feel like that's the thing that I always have a hard time putting words to, is helping men understand those realms and what they can open to, that consciousness in that way.
Yeah, I think, um, that's kind of like a whole entire lesson. But when it comes to like spiritual sciences like Tantra or any spiritual science, I think what a lot of people don't understand is to truly mature as a spiritual being and becoming enlightened. It's all about connecting your higher self. So the part that is connected to God and your understanding and your
Hmm.
wisdom with your primal self.
Yes.
So that's, your ancestral energy, your urges, the stuff that keeps you alive, your drive for life,
Your drive for sex.
your
Yeah.
sex drive. That's your primal energy. We become enlightened, truly enlightened and mature beings when we can find an alignment and connection with those things.
Yeah.
Not because this is why you have preachers and priests and stuff. Well, they'll have all this biblical or spiritual, scriptural knowledge, but they'll be molesting little boys.
Yes.
They have no control over their sexual energy. It's
Yeah.
completely suppressed. They haven't matured it. They haven't purified it. Everything is higher self about God, but you have completely neglected to address your primal urges.
Yep.
And you cannot be a mature, enlightened human being if you haven't addressed that. Doesn't mean you have to be having sex all the time and enjoying it, but you still have to have a practice that includes dealing with that energy.
Yeah. Right.
Mhm.
Those primal and shadowy parts, right? The parts that, we feel repulsion or disgust, or the places that we can't necessarily come to agreements with people or partners, right? All of that actually has to be worked through and understood. Otherwise, right, those are the things that, come out sideways and bite people in the ass.
Exactly. And because in our modern society, sex is not addressed out in the open, we don't have great education surrounding it. So a
Yeah.
lot of times the shame and the stuff we think is disgusting, is related to our genitals, how we think about sex, and emotionally how we feel about that.
Yeah.
It's a lot of times it is related to our sexuality a lot of the times, yeah.
Yeah.
But it's natural. I try to say all the time, like God created sexual energy. He created, or she created, our genitals and how we have children. Like we didn't
Right.
come up with that. So obviously it was necessary. It's natural and it's divine.
Yeah. Yeah. I wonder too about your work with men, because I know a lot of men come to me, and what part of what we end up talking about, right, is what is it that actually turns you on, not what you think should turn you on, not what society says is okay that gets you turned on, right? But what actually turns you on. And then how do you mature in a mature way, collaborate with someone else? And that it doesn't mean that there's something wrong with you if a woman doesn't want to do what you want to do, right? It doesn't mean you're dirty or you're nasty or those things like you were saying. It just means that people have different desires. And so do you also work with men around those desires and helping them actually feel okay or feel right about them?
Well, actually, I haven't done a lot of that work, but I will. I am collaborating with another man on
Mhm.
a virtual sacred sexuality retreat. And a lot of that is going to be about them being able to have a safe space to say what they need, like, what are my sexual desires?
So good.
Houses men. And I think it's so important because what you find, I don't know for you, but I find this that when you start talking about how people express or what they like or what pleases them, it's never just about sex. Like we
No.
always get into some deeper topics. And
Yeah.
so a man might find something particularly arouses him and it leads to, something else either from his childhood or something that he
Yes.
saw that creates that arousal. And it's not necessarily good or bad, but we start to explore more authentically, like where does that come from and why does
Yeah.
that? We really start to get into some deep work,
Yeah.
inner child work a lot of times. when you start to delve into that. And that's why
Yeah.
it's so important too.
I found that deeper why so powerful and beautiful, right? For one's own wholeness and then
Yes.
also for a partnership, right? Because, someone might want to be dominated or you know, tied up or whatever. And for one person, it might be because they want to feel safe and contained and held. For another person, it's like, well, if I can't move or do anything, then I could never be wrong. For another person, feeling pain actually is equated with feeling loved. I mean, right, there are all different levels of what can create those turn ons and arousals. And I think to be clear about what that deeper why is, really allows someone to then consciously, like you were saying, explore it.
Yeah, explore it without any judgment,
Yes.
because the way our body responds is very natural.
Yeah.
Um, and it's very much like the body does not lie. And so there's always something unconsciously or subconsciously to explore that we can learn about ourselves, especially when we hold a space of non-judgment.
Yeah.
And it's like it's not about determining, like you said, whether what you like is right or wrong. It's kind of like, getting deeper, pulling off the layers and learning more about yourself so that the more you learn about yourself, the more you can determine how to move forward in helping yourself, feel more whole so
Yeah.
that you can go out into the world and be like, oh, I know this triggers me, or I know that this is what I'm
Right.
responding to. This is what I would like to work on to make life a little bit more smooth or easier to
Yeah.
go through for me. Like, it's really, really important work.
It is. And when I think about wholeness, we could look at it in a way where it just seems so abstract or theoretical. But what you just said, oh, if I know what triggers me, I don't have to be as reactive. Or if I know that I'm going to feel ashamed if a woman looks at me a certain way in the bedroom or something happens, right? I don't have to be stuck in that automatic reaction. I can actually witness it, connect about it, be vulnerable about it instead of the same blow up or the same downward spiral that's happened dozens of times.
Right. And that helps you in the bedroom be able to sustain your erections because you
Yes.
can focus your energy on
Right.
where you want it to go instead of it being all in your head. Like diet and exercise, lifting, herbs, vitamins, yes, they help with your erections. But I find that a lot of times for men, besides like hormonally, when you need to start
Hmm.
reserving your semen and not just nutting, nutting, nutting all the time, because you're not creating testosterone like you used to. But besides that, a lot of times men have tough time with arousal and erections because they're in their head or they're angry
Yes.
or the relationship with their partner is not going well. There's a lot of times a mental and emotional aspect. They may be afraid of intimacy.
Hmm.
If you have gone throughout your life kind of emotionally disconnecting when it came to sex and it's all just about fucking, 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 and then you find somebody that you really like.
Actually connect with.
Right, and it's scary as hell. That
Yes.
can affect your erection. So,
Yeah. I mean, so many men who come to me in their 40s and 50s often don't have an erection in the beginning of a relationship or a dynamic, and they're so worried that women are going to find that unattractive. But at the same time, what I'm seeing is, oh, you actually now need more of an emotional intimate connection before your body is going to allow you to be sexual with this person, whereas when you were younger, yeah, you didn't really need that.
yeah, you weren't as sensitive. So, like our
Mhm.
bodies, our hormones and stuff change, but also, which I think is kind of a good thing,
It is, I think, too.
you want a young, tight, this or that, or you want somebody that can just go, go, go. But I think as an adult, as I've matured,
Yeah.
I really appreciate the fact that no, I guess I want a little bit more creativity. I want a little bit because I'm mature. So
Yes.
I want to experience different realms of pleasure. So
Hmm.
if you're able to explore different layers of pleasure, your body may just not naturally sensitively react, but the levels that you can go to are so much higher. If your nut or your cum or your orgasm comes super quick, then the experience and the journey is cut short. So
Totally. And there are ways I think we, especially as women, don't open until, Right. I've heard actually a tantric teacher talk about how there are 7 gates for a woman's arousal
Mhm.
that happen, what is it, sequentially, one after the other, whereas men often have 3 and they all happen simultaneously at the same time. And so, right. So if you're coming more quickly or you're ending the experience, a woman doesn't get to those states of pleasure, which actually comes back to you, right? If she's experiencing that pleasure, then you get to be in that cycle with her and you both get to expand the amount of pleasure.
Right.
When
Yeah.
you think about the realms of pleasure, do you have a sense of what they are? Like, are you referring to specific realms that you're aware of or layers of pleasure?
Yeah, I think there's definitely like when I think about my own personal experience. Now, I should be honest, like the tantra that I practice is a lot about self-cultivation, which I don't always know if people realize. Like I was talking about in the beginning, like
Yeah.
tantra is about like your divine growing your divine connection with God and your
Yep.
journey of the self,
Yeah.
becoming your most authentic self. So a lot of practices start with you, and so a lot of what I have been taught and a lot of the work that I have done has been self-cultivation practices.
Like
And so,
self-pleasuring practices or just all over whole, not just sexual practices.
well, what I mean is like they're sexual, they're just self-cultivating. So like yoni breathing, I don't know if you've ever heard of that.
Uh-huh. Yep.
Or even my yoga practices that I do. Also, for my particular practice of Tantra with my guru or my teacher, like we use tantric tools, wands, vibrators, or whatever to explore raising the energy up the chakras on our own. And it can be guided or
Yes.
not. So working with that to actually open the third eye and stuff like that,
Mhm.
a lot of my work has been through that. When it comes to partners, I've only done a couple of things with partners
Mhm.
regularly. I'm working on being able to do that more. And
Nice.
most of them have been like through romantic relationships. And
Yeah.
so yes, I do know, and I think a lot of women too know, if you have a really loving partner and you have a longer lovemaking session, the yoni opens up more
Mhm.
with, each gate that opens within you, the more, levels of pleasure you're able to go to, the waves of energy go up,
Yes.
so I have experienced that, but it's kind of hard to find a guy that is like well versed in tantra, like to make love to, but I have had, a good lover where I understand that the energy is able to come out. But the great thing, especially for women, for men and women, is that when you have done a lot of self cultivating, if you have like just a good partner, that energy still will come up because
Right.
it's like a neurological memory. So
Yes.
if you've had like a kundalini experience through meditation and self cultivation, sexually arousing
It
yourself,
opens up the sexual experience with a partner.
opens up regardless with other
Yes.
people. So
Yes.
I've had interesting experiences, spiritual experiences because of the work that I've done, and then
Yes.
it's helped assisting me get there.
I love
So
it. I hear the call too, right? Like, can we have more men out there who are actually, it doesn't have to be trained in Tantra, but, the consciousness and the
consciousness,
capacity to stay present in the midst of these intense
that's
feelings and
so
sensations.
much for your partner or your lover, especially for a woman, but even if you're with a man or like whatever your sexual orientation is,
Yeah.
like that would do so much just being able to hold space
And not rush, you said?
and not rush and be
Yes.
conscious. I think like what you said is so aware because I just had so like I'm recently divorced
Yeah.
and I had like one of my first like casual sex experience
Yeah.
and it was awful because
Oh, I'm so sorry.
it's just, he was so disconnected
Yeah.
like emotionally he wasn't really able to hold space. He was
Yep.
very robotic and I didn't mind that it was like kind of more like a casual experience. And for me, casual means like we're not in a committed relationship.
Right.
Like
But it can be deep and wild and conscious and loving. It could be
right.
all
But
those
he was
things.
just, it was like making love to a teenager. Like
Ugh.
he was very disconnected and he wasn't able to empathize or pay attention or have body awareness with
Attuned
things.
to you. Yeah.
So like you said, just being a conscious lover,
Yeah.
and Tantra can help you work with that, but just the basics of that, some men learn that because they were taught by an older woman or whatever. But just learning Tantra and learning how to hold space and be conscious and have body awareness and being aware of another woman's body, knowing about the gates that
Yeah.
open and that it takes time, and being able to see the fluids and understand, okay, she's here, she's not
Yes.
midway, or that because you're paying attention to the fluids, that are coming out of the yoni. Like
At
those,
which different fluids come out at different gates.
right.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Right. But yeah, they call it the sacred waters. Yeah, the Amrita,
Yes. Yes.
when women that had been made love to really well, we understand that, like when we
Oh my
get
God.
where
Yes.
things are really good, it gets, a little bit more white and thicker, and, and lots of it can come out of the
Yes.
yoni.
And amazing to have men who actually get that and who are, excited and aroused by that as opposed to turned off by that or, somehow
Everything, right?
tense. Yes.
Ooh, that's nasty like that. It's like it's like little children, like even, and if anybody visits my Instagram page, sometimes I do nude yoga. I don't do a ton of it, and it's not like you don't see my full frontal yoni or nipples, but you might see my ass cheek in a splits pose or something like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Um, I try to be a little creative and artistic with it, and some of them are professional photos. But some people just are like, "Hey, my God, look at this!" And then other people are able to appreciate it for the art that I'm showing.
Yes.
A maturity thing, you know what I'm saying? It's like you've seen an ass before, like it's okay. Like it's okay to be aroused by it,
Yeah.
but as an adult, you don't want to go back to like a 10 or 11 or 12-year
Right.
old.
To be aroused and to be able to hold that energy as opposed to just like, I gotta spit it out or, get it out of me somehow. I can't handle having more
Or
life
be
energy.
triggered by it, where you got to say something like, like some
Yes.
like that, like they just have to say something, I don't know, odd,
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
you say to something that's kind of childish versus someone say, oh, that's beautiful, or oh, that looks really nice, or oh, that's super
Or,
sexy. Like,
oh, that turns me on and how, how, right, how exciting. But from that place, that's that tone to that place of like, oh, this is such a turn on versus, oh my God, that's like
right, like a
the
little
the
kid.
the little, right, the teenagery, like, oh, the giggles or the having to release that.
Person, where you can't see the essence of a woman. All you see is just her
Like
straight
the ass or the tits,
physical.
right? Yes.
Right. And that's really important, because if you aren't able to see that, then it's hard to be around the full embodiment of a woman when you're making love, because you're
Yeah.
too easily triggered. You don't have a lot of control over your own arousal, and
Yeah.
that's not going to work well for you in the bedroom if you're
No.
really gonna be kingly.
Yes. Yes, right. The kingly man has I was thinking of the word, I can't remember if I said this yet, but like when you said something before, I thought of the word conduit, right? It's like he's a conduit conducting energy as opposed to a live wire that's just, spitting out sparks all over the place.
Yes, I love that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you want to be a conduit, yeah, of energy for your lover. And I think, guys love their egos being fed. They want to know if they're a good lover, and all this stuff. And women know that until they fake it. And yeah, you're great, or they don't say anything. You feel really bad. But and when you learn to mature and you're able to control your sexual energy, and you understand the sacredness of your own sexuality, because
Yeah.
men's sexuality is just as sacred as a woman. They probably don't hear that as often, but it is. And when you can be in that space, it's extremely sexy. You have a certain air of confidence that you don't have to say much, and the woman will remember that. She
Oh
can
yeah.
see that type of presence. She's going to yearn for it.
Yes.
Won't have to tell you that she's enjoying herself, because you will
You
know.
will know. It
And
will be
she's
very clear.
coming back all the time.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you for, being honest and vulnerable with your own life and for seeing the beauty, right? Not judging these experiences that men have, but and actually, help supporting that maturing of the sexual energy and the spiritual energy.
Yeah, well, there's nothing that turns me on more than a guy that wants to learn. Like, and I find that usually a lot of times your better lovers, they do want to learn. And
Yes. And they're okay asking questions and right versus that young teenage sense of I'm supposed to know this already. I'm not allowed to ask. I just have to, man up and figure it out. Like that's actually not a mature way to come to this.
because every connection is going to be different with every person and what they like. So you're going to be constantly learning. And
Yeah.
the body, it's so amazing. And our sexual expression and our sexuality is forever evolving.
Yeah.
Just like we mature in every other aspect of life, your sexuality should continue to mature and evolve.
Yes.
There's always going to be something to learn and explore in that area of life.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Where can people find you if they want more of you?
Okay, so I have a website. It's crystaltantricyogi.com. I offer coaching, couples coaching. I have a Tantra yoga class every Wednesday virtually.
Nice.
Um, and I also have my Instagram, which is crystal_tantric yogi, and a YouTube channel that's crystal_tantric yogi too, or it's just crystal tantric yogi. You'll find
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, you'll find it.
Yeah.
I'll put all the links in the show notes as well.
Hey, thank you for
Awesome.
having me. This was a lot of fun.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad you joined us for today's episode of Man Alive. I hope you enjoyed our conversation and it gave you something to consider and explore in your life. If you like what you heard, I'd be so grateful for you to subscribe and write a quick review that helps men like you find us. And again, head over to shanajamescoaching.com/quiz or text the word ALIVE, ALIVE, to 44144 to get a sense of how you can become a better lover and leader. You'll start to see how you can be both more respected and desired in your unique and genuine way. If you don't feel as confident or as excited about life or love as you'd like to be, this quiz is a really great starting point and will guide you toward a more passionate love life and a more inspiring and successful career. So again, text ALIVE, ALIVE, to 44144 or head over to shanajamescoaching.com/quiz. Join us each week for a new episode of Man Alive.